This is disgusting, can't you see? Brittany Collins, the head janitorial supervisor, barked at Darius Monroe, the new black custodian. Darius glanced at the sparkling glass and said calmly, "I just cleaned it." Without waiting for a reply, Brittany grabbed a full cup of coffee and lobbed it across the table. The dark liquid splattered on the glass and trickled down onto the floor. Folding her arms and fixing him with a hard stare, she ordered, "Clean it again now." As we dive into this tale, if you believe that every person deserves respect, regardless of who they are or what their skin tone may be, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and let us know where you're watching from. It was a bright, early morning at Kensington Holdings, a multi-million-dollar enterprise famous for its achievements in real estate investments and high-end business ventures. The office tower loomed in the city skyline, teeming with employees in crisp suits, carrying pricey briefcases, sipping on gourmet coffee, and working as if the world revolved around them. Out front, a single motorbike rolled up to the glass doors, its engine humming through the calm of corporate life. Darius Monroe stepped off the bike, casually dressed in a simple hoodie, dark jeans, and a worn backpack slung over one shoulder. To the casual observer, he looked entirely unremarkable. But little did anyone know he wasn't just another visitor. He was the eldest son of the company's billionaire owner, the rightful heir to the empire, and soon to be the chief executive officer. Yet today he wasn't entering as the boss. He was blending in as a nobody. For many years, Darius had lived abroad, learning, growing, and becoming the man his late black mother would have celebrated. His father, William Kensington, a white man who had remarried, had run the company with an iron hand. But Darius had caught wind of troubling rumors, stories of bias, unfair promotions, and hushed talks that minorities were treated like second-class citizens in his father's realm. Today, he was determined to see it for himself. As he walked toward the entrance, adjusting his backpack, he immediately sensed curious eyes upon him. Employees in designer attire glanced his way in puzzlement. Two receptionists, impeccably dressed in business outfits, exchanged knowing looks. And then there was Trevor Bennett. Trevor, one of the senior operations managers, was tall and stocky with slicked back hair and an air of superiority. He took pride in maintaining what he believed were high company standards, meaning that only people who matched a certain image should belong. And in Trevor's view, Darius certainly did not. When Darius reached the glass doors, Trevor fixed him with a long, disapproving look, and with a smirk slowly spreading across his face, stepped forward. "Hey, pal, deliveries go to the back," he said. Darius paused, taking in the unexpected dismissal. It was a subtle sign. He turned slowly to meet Trevor's smug expression and let the moment sink in. Have you ever walked into somewhere and, before you even said a word, people assumed you didn't belong? Think about it and share your experiences in the comments. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Darius could have spoken up right then and revealed his true identity, but not yet. Instead, he offered a slow, knowing smile and replied in a laid-back tone, "I'm not here for a delivery. I was actually wondering if there are any job openings. I really need work." "Really?" Trevor arched an eyebrow as he looked Darius up and down, as if he were some stubborn stain clinging to the bottom of his polished shoes. A few nearby employees chuckled, and some even whispered among themselves, as if the idea of this casually dressed black man joining Kensington Holdings was laughable. Trevor folded his arms and scoffed. "A job, huh? You want to work here?" Darius simply nodded, his face an even mask. "Yes, I'm looking for an opportunity." Trevor laughed mockingly. "I doubt it, we're not hiring," he said dismissively, turning away as if the conversation were over. But Darius stayed put. "Are you absolutely sure?" he asked. "I'll take any available position." Trevor, clearly done with the conversation, gave an exaggerated sigh and waved over a nearby receptionist. "Hey, check the system and see if there's anything that might suit him." The receptionist, barely containing a smirk, quickly typed on her computer. After a short pause, she looked up and grinned. "There is one opening available." She shot a glance at Trevor. Trevor returned the smirk. "Oh, really? And what is it?" The receptionist let out a slight condescending laugh. "The janitorial team is looking for someone." For a moment, the atmosphere was thick with silent amusement. Trevor turned back to Darius, his smile growing wider. "So, you really want this opportunity, don't you?" Darius tilted his head as if considering the weight of the moment. He could feel their stares, the barely concealed laughter, and their assumption that he was desperate. In that moment, he made his decision. With a calm nod and a gentle smile, he said, "I'll take it." Trevor blinked in surprise. "What did you say?" Darius repeated his words, louder this time. "I'll take it." Trevor burst into laughter, and the other employees joined in, shaking their heads in disbelief that this man would actually accept a janitor's job. Yet Darius remained unfazed, smiling quietly, because they had no idea they had just set the stage for their own downfall. They had inadvertently given the future CEO of Kensington Holdings a front-row seat to witness the depth of their prejudice. They had no clue who they were dealing with, and they were about to learn a very important lesson. You might think that once he landed a job, things would start looking up for Darius Monroe, but the real challenge was just beginning. Imagine entering a place where everyone assumes you're beneath them. Picture working somewhere every word, every glance, every breath reminds you that you don't belong. Have you ever been treated unfairly at work just for being who you are? Share your story in the comments. What happens next in this account is the kind of injustice that will really get your blood boiling. And if you're already hooked, go ahead and hit that subscribe and like button. You won't believe what unfolds next. There he was, Darius Monroe, the hidden heir to Kensington Holdings, standing in a janitor's uniform with a mop and bucket in hand. He had been on the job for less than an hour when it became painfully obvious that he was not welcome. The building's floors shone under fancy chandeliers, polished by generations of workers who had walked these corridors before him, yet none of them, absolutely none, had ever been the undercover CEO. Still, everyone in the building saw him, only as a custodian, a fact made even clearer by his new supervisor. Her name was Brittany Collins, a tall blonde woman with a permanently stern look. Brittany had been with Kensington Holdings for many years and took pride in her role. Perhaps too much, because she believed she wielded power over those she considered beneath her. And from the very start, she made it clear to Darius that he belonged at the bottom. It all began immediately. "What do you think you're doing?" Brittany's sharp voice echoed down the hall as Darius, mop in hand, turned to see her striding toward him with a scowl. "I'm just mopping," he replied, glancing briefly at the mop before meeting her eyes again. Brittany snapped back. "Don't get smart with me. I don't like your kind, thinking you can act all superior around here. You're nothing special." Darius only smiled, curious to see just how far her disdain would go. Brittany's dislike for him wasn't subtle. She made sure to show it every chance she got. If he mopped a hallway, it was never good enough. If he wiped a desk, it always ended up streaky. Even if he emptied a trash can, he was too slow. No matter what he did, Brittany always found something to criticize, and she didn't just correct him, she humiliated him in front of everyone. "Are you stupid?" she sneered one afternoon as Darius finished cleaning the executive lounge. Calm as ever, Darius set his rag down and asked, "Did I do something wrong?" Brittany rolled her eyes dramatically as she turned to a group of nearby employees who were watching. "Did you do something wrong?" she mocked, laughing sarcastically. "Maybe it's because you're still cleaning like a little kid." The employees snickered quietly. Darius absorbed every expression around him without reacting or flinching, knowing that soon they would all regret underestimating him. Just when he thought things couldn't get any worse, Trevor Bennett reappeared. Yes, that same condescending manager who had ridiculed him on his very first day. Trevor, still completely unaware that the man he was belittling was destined to own his entire future, strode into the hallway where Darius was diligently scrubbing the floor on his knees. "Well, well, well," Trevor said with a smirk, not even needing to turn around to relish his own expression of superiority. "Look at you. Seems we've found the perfect spot for you, huh?" Darius exhaled slowly and muttered under his breath, "Not yet, not yet." He wasn't ready to reveal his true identity. This was only going to get better. Determined to make Darius's life miserable, Trevor set out on a mission. He deliberately dropped trash on the freshly cleaned floor, spilled coffee on purpose, demanding that Darius clean it up immediately, and constantly referred to him as boy in front of everyone. Some employees burst into laughter, some remained silent, and a few watched intently because something about Darius didn't quite add up. His confident stance, his calm demeanor, the way he seemed to size everyone up. Yet the mistreatment persisted until one day, Brittany took it way too far. Darius had just finished tidying the executive conference room when Brittany stormed in. "What is this?" she demanded, pointing at the immaculate table. Darius blinked and said, "It's the table." Brittany scoffed. "This is filthy. Can't you see? Are you blind?" Darius pointed to the spotless glass and reminded her, "I just cleaned it." Brittany's lips twisted into a sneer. "You missed a spot." Without any hesitation, she scooped up another full cup of coffee and threw it across the table. The dark liquid splashed all over the glass, dripping down onto the floor. Brittany crossed her arms and glared at Darius. "Now clean it again," she ordered. Suddenly, the room fell completely silent. Everyone passing by stopped in their tracks, eyes widening in disbelief. Darius took a deep breath and smiled. That smile was the calm before the storm, because Brittany and Trevor had no idea that their world was about to be turned upside down. Darius Monroe had been playing a long game. He had endured mockery, humiliation, and demeaning treatment. Everyone had assumed he was just a janitor, someone beneath them. But they were all about to learn that he was destined to be their new boss. And when his father, William Kensington, the powerful white head of the company, finally arrived, every preconceived notion, every judgment, every ounce of arrogance in that building would be obliterated. Suddenly, the receptionist's phone rang sharply, cutting through the office chatter. She answered with her usual professional tone until her expression shifted to shock and panic, because the caller was none other than William Kensington himself, the owner, the billionaire whose name graced every document in this company, and he was on his way. News of his arrival spread like wildfire throughout the building. Executives straightened their ties, secretaries hurried to organize files, and employees whispered excitedly the big boss was coming. But no one was more thrilled than Trevor Bennett, who believed that his chance to impress the head honcho had finally arrived. In his mind, this was the moment he would shine, shaking hands with William Kensington, discussing the company's growth, maybe even earning a promotion. In Trevor's eyes, Darius was merely a background figure in his perfect corporate world, but he was about to get a lesson he'd never forget. Then, as if on cue, the elevator doors opened, and the room fell into a heavy silence. William Kensington had arrived, a tall, commanding man in a sleek grey suit, his face radiating authority. His mere presence demanded respect. Flanked by his assistants, bodyguards, and senior executives who walked in perfect formation, every person in the room instinctively straightened up. Trevor puffed out his chest, while Brittany, still clinging to her prejudiced notions, adjusted her blouse, already imagining how she might win favor with the boss. The murmurs grew. Everyone was waiting for this moment. William Kensington moved to the center of the room, turned slowly, and smiled before speaking words that would change everything. "Ladies and gentlemen, today is a very special day for our company." The room held its breath. Trevor leaned in eagerly, and Brittany clasped her hands together, her eyes glistening with anticipation. "For years, I have built Kensington Holdings with the hope of leaving a lasting legacy, a company that stands for excellence, success, and most importantly, integrity." A few people shifted uncomfortably at that word before William smiled again and continued. "Today, I am proud to announce that my firstborn son is officially here in this building." A wave of confusion swept through the room. Firstborn son, people whispered to one another. His son, the new CEO? Trevor's heart pounded because no one had ever seen William's son before. The whispers grew louder. "Wait, isn't there supposed to be a younger son from his second marriage? Who is he?" Trevor's mind raced. If William's son was the new CEO, then he must have been in the office all along. His eyes scanned the room until he realized the only explanation was that it had to be someone unexpected. Perhaps one of the young executives in tailored suits quietly standing at the back, or a well-dressed guy from the finance department. Trevor smirked, thinking, "This is perfect. A wealthy white guy as the new CEO is just how things should be." Brittany, standing beside him, nodded in agreement. They believed there was nothing to worry about. But then William spoke again, his voice shaking the very foundations of the room. "My son is already here." In a proud tone, he added, "Darius, come over here." Time seemed to stop as every single eye in the room turned in search of him. Trevor glanced around, and Brittany's confident smile vanished as they all saw him standing there, still in his janitor's uniform, still holding his mop, right where they had left him. Complete silence ensued. Then Trevor's face turned ashen, and Brittany gasped, her hand flying to her chest. Employees whispered in disbelief, realizing that the man they had ridiculed, the man they had dismissed as insignificant, was now their new CEO. In that instant, Trevor knew he had made the gravest mistake of his life. Today, in front of everyone, Trevor Bennett and Brittany Collins were about to face the consequences of their actions. They had spent days ridiculing Darius Monroe, laughing at him, treating him as if he were nothing. Never in their wildest dreams did they imagine that the very person they had humiliated would end up holding the future of this company in his hands. And now, the truth was staring them in the face. For a long, heart-stopping moment, no one moved, or even breathed. The tension in the room was so thick you could almost hear the rapid beating of hearts. Trevor, standing near the center of the room, stared blankly at Darius, his mouth slightly agape, unable to form a single word. Brittany, just a few feet away, felt her stomach drop. Her face turned pale and her eyes widened in disbelief. It simply couldn't be true. Darius, the janitor? No, it wasn't possible. They had spent the last several days putting him down, forcing him to clean up their messes, and making him endure spilled drinks just so he would have to mop them up. Brittany had even thrown coffee across a table in front of everyone, and now they were being told that this very man was the CEO of Kensington Holdings. It had to be a sick, twisted joke, but it wasn't. Stepping forward with impeccable posture and calm determination, Darius announced, "I assume you all have plenty of questions." His voice, smooth and commanding, cut through the silence. The room remained utterly still. Trevor blinked rapidly, scrambling for something to say, while Brittany looked as if she wished she could vanish. After a few heavy seconds of silence, Darius turned to his father, who stood nearby with his hands behind his back, watching with quiet approval. Darius nodded slightly, and his father nodded back, affirming that the room now belonged to him. "My name is Darius Monroe Kensington," he declared, his voice rolling over the office like a wave that demanded everyone's attention. "I am the firstborn son of William Kensington, and as of today, I am your new CEO." In an instant, the truth was out, and there was nothing anyone could do to change it. Trevor's entire body tensed up, Brittany let out a strangled gasp, and employees exchanged stunned looks. Someone even let out a low whistle, unable to believe what they had just heard. Standing tall and unshaken in his janitor's uniform, Darius exuded a quiet yet undeniable power. For the first time since he had entered those doors, everyone was seeing him for exactly who he was. Over the past several days, Darius had silently observed the way they treated him, how they laughed, and how they stripped him of dignity as if he were invisible. Now the truth was clear. Trevor Bennett was finished. Brittany Collins was disgraced. And the rest of the employees were about to hear some of the most important words of their lives. This was not just one man's triumph. It was about dismantling a system that allowed discrimination to flourish. The silence in the room was overwhelming. Those who had once laughed or whispered behind his back now couldn't even meet his gaze. Darius walked slowly forward, still in his janitor's uniform, but radiating a calm, powerful presence. There was no longer any doubt about who he was. Today, he was their leader. Taking one careful step after another, he scanned every face in the room before finally saying, "Respect." A single word that hit the air like a bolt of lightning. He paused to let it sink in, then continued, "Respect isn't something that should be given only to a select few. It shouldn't be based on race, social class, how someone dresses, or the way they speak. Respect should be the foundation of everything we do, because without it, we become exactly what we saw happening here this week." A few employees dropped their heads in remorse as the weight of his words sank in. "I have walked these halls. I have been ignored, overlooked, and treated with outright contempt. I have been forced to clean up messes that were purposely made to humiliate me." His words landed heavily on everyone's shoulders, and yet he wasn't finished. "And I've learned one thing." He paused again, every breath in the room held in suspense. "Those who tear others down do it because they're afraid." Darius nodded slowly. Afraid of change, afraid of equality, and afraid of a world where power isn't measured by privilege, but by one's integrity. That stops today. The promise in his voice was unyielding. Turning to his father, the man who had built this company from scratch, who had trusted others to run it, and who had just discovered that some of those people had been steering it off course. William Kensington nodded once. He wasn't just looking at his son, he was looking at the future. "Effective immediately," Darius announced, "this company will enforce new policies to make sure discrimination has no place in our offices." A shocked murmur ran through the room as a few employees gasped, though none dared protest. What could they possibly say? Darius went on, "There will be accountability, there will be consequences, and there will be change." Then unexpectedly he smiled. This moment wasn't about revenge or inflicting suffering. It was about creating something better. "Our company will no longer be built on arrogance. It will be built on respect, fairness, and the belief that we all rise when we help each other. Today, you no longer see me just as a janitor. You see me as your leader." At that moment, everything shifted. Darius then turned back to his father. William Kensington drew in a deep breath, his chest swelling with pride, and then did something he had never done before. He stepped forward and shook his son's hand. It was a public declaration, a clear, unspoken truth, that this company now belonged to Darius Monroe, and it was time to rewrite its future. That is how you change the world, not with anger or revenge, but with true power, the kind that doesn't just break down old systems, but builds something better. What do you think? Did Darius make the right call? Should he have been a bit kinder Or did he handle it just perfectly? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed this story, hit that like button, subscribe, and stay tuned for what comes next.